Okay, so this video is the part that fits into the strategic planning process about environmental scans, and the course covers 3 of them: PEST, Porters, and SWOT. And remember that this would be done to really help a business understand and assess the operating environment that it is in, because to create your strategic plan, you've really got to look at what is happening around you, both internally, externally, in relation to the intensity of the competition, plus also those macro pest elements which may impact you into the future, and having the ability to achieve your goals, objectives, and maintain or gain a competitive advantage in an industry. So the first environmental scan is PEST, which is one which gives a macro view, meaning a whole or total. So we talk about macro and micro. Micro meaning, in depth. Macro meaning an overall view of the environment a business is operating in, which could be in one country, it could be globally. PEST would include political and legal considerations like tax, liability, product liability, the stability of relationships, free trade agreements, environmental regulations. There is a range of things. If the business is operating globally, then you would have to investigate what that looks like in a global context. Absolutely. So economic is really those economic factors from previously in Unit 4. An example would potentially be, look, if interest rates are increasing over a 3 to 5 year period, then if I was a medium-sized business who still borrowed money from a financial institution, potentially I might look for a better deal somewhere else. But really, businesses need to use statistics to research the future and make some predictions based on evidence, because this could impact significantly on your profitability if you get it wrong. Social cultural, we know, change every day, but increasingly, over a 3 to 5 year period, what is trending now is not going to in 3 or 5 years' time. We know that expectations consistently are changing, and that could be towards the environment, it could be to do with labour relations and people, it could do with other elements of ethical production. We just have to keep in touch and research what is actually happening to make well-informed decisions. Technology, by the time you watch this video, the technology is probably already out of date thanks to generative AI. So if there is a case study and you're asked to apply PEST in some way, then AI has got to form a major part of it. Other aspects of technology which a business would need to research is automation, and how AI and technology can be used as part of your production process through innovation. The research and development, and social media and that evolving landscape, because that could help with your marketing, etc. So for time, if I was you, I would pause the video and have a read through the case study from 2020. Just before you pause, it is quite a while ago now that this was asked in an exam where you apply the case study. The last year, 2024, the question was to basically explain which of the scans gave a macroeconomic view, and PEST was the only correct answer for that one. So I guess both the theory and the application are still important. So if I was you, I'm pause the video and you'll be very quick in matching up which color represent which aspect of PEST, and we'll go through the marking key in a minute. Okay, so as you can see, basically in a 12-mark question, you needed to come up with a minimum of 3 elements from the case study which fit each of the categories. So there was plenty there. I think in purple for the political and legal aspect, it is absolutely worthwhile for you to just not dot point in your exam, but I would definitely write a sentence still before I got into the examples, just explaining what each aspect of PEST was. I think that is very favourable from an examiner's or from a marker's point of view, because it sets up, I think, despite what might be in the examiner's report, I do believe that the examiner and the markers look favourably on students who can actually write a well-rounded answer, which includes things like topic sentences and a paragraph rather than dot points. It just looks better. So we know what each of the PEST things are, so you can see their direct quotes. So there is, in relation to Singapore, a free trade agreement. There's obviously lots of collaboration, so that's political and legal. In terms of economic, you can see the number of the amount that Singaporean visitors spent. Also, that it is a stable dollar with similar value between the Australian dollar and the Singapore dollar. In terms of technology, they're big social media users and very tech savvy. Instagram being the choice of social media that fits best. And social cultural, I highlighted probably in the case study more than was relevant, but I think they still apply. International cuisines, I would argue that for the business, the marquee landmarks in Australia are a social cultural factor, which the business would leverage to gain more business. So that was PEST. So SWOT, again, is internal and external factors which can help a business understand potentially its strengths internally, and also opportunities and threats for its expansion globally or into a new market, or again, to maintain that competitive advantage over rivals. So again, here is another case study, an application of the case study. This was from 2022. It was a girl who was looking to start a horticulture business through Freelancer, which, as you can see, is kind of like an Airbnb sort of system. So again, if I was you, I would pause the video and see if you can match up the colors with the elements of SWOT. Okay, so here, if you read the question carefully, it says to prepare a SWOT analysis for Natasha, and also it says to evaluate whether the business is a viable idea. So two things in one, 12-mark question, pretty serious question. So the word prepare means obviously to put together that SWOT analysis. That verb prepare has not come up too often in WACE exams. And looking through, you can see the strengths are that she does have some knowledge of horticulture. She also has a knowledge of marketing, and she knows that for success, she'll need to be innovative in her approach. The weaknesses are, unfortunately, she's never really run a business before and is not comfortable with the financial and legal side. And she, to succeed, will have to put in money in creating YouTubes and podcasts, which may take or detract from other elements of business. The good part about using Freelancer is that you can just jump straight in. You don't necessarily need a lot of experience. It's a good way to test the business. Creating a YouTube channel is also free, and it does have a global audience. And yeah, within the case study, if you look carefully, it also says that more people were looking to grow their food at home. This obviously was on the back end of COVID. So the threats, businesses like this on YouTube are a dime a dozen, as most businesses are on YouTube. There's a high commission. So that's probably the biggest threat, is that commission that the company Freelancer will take for her to be on there. Same thing with all the others like Uber, which leads to uncertain income. And then, because of that commission alone taken by Freelancer, at some point she's got to question whether or not this is a sustainable model. So then you've got to take all that, and the word evaluate means to ascertain the value of and appraise carefully. So your evaluation means you have to provide a recommendation. You have to say, yes, it is a viable idea, or no. And in the marking key, if you made that statement either yes or no, you would actually get a mark. And then the other marks, 4 of them, would come from your use of the evidence to back up and justify your point of view. So absolutely, there is an argument for both. It would depend on what you believed, and you can see there on the screen, there's quite a few reasons that you could evaluate one or the other. So a tricky question, which has not come up for a couple of years. Yeah, very difficult. Porter's 5 forces is also quite difficult. I find, in teaching it, and really it's about the intensity of competition within an industry, which can be examined by looking at 5 different forces, be it the existing competitive rivalry in an industry, which, if it is intense, may limit the opportunity for a new firm to enter, the threat of new entrants themselves, and if there are low barriers to entry, it might mean lots of companies can enter. The bargaining power of suppliers. So if there is really only one or two suppliers in an industry and they have high power, they can influence the price that the business pays for its supplies. Bargaining power of buyers, excuse the typo, is quite rare that it would be high. It's really for luxury goods where there are only one or two buyers in the market. And the threat of substitutes, products and services. So if there are lots of substitutes, then the threat is high and sales would be reduced as a result. So this one was from 2021. So there's been a couple of different ways that Porter's been asked over the years. At one point, it was a very easy question, which just asks you to label a diagram. Another time, it's asked you to explain, I think, a couple of the forces. This was a very difficult question because, again, you have to advise whether or not the person, Matilda in this case, should actually expand into Europe. So no highlighting, being that this is a bit more tricky. So pause the video and see if you can find information in the case study which would give you evidence to discuss the availability of substitutes and the bargaining power of buyers. So take a minute. Okay, so not a lot, but hopefully you would see in terms of the bargaining power of buyers that she's going into Europe and that probably there's going to be a lot of buyers. Europe has a very large population compared to Australia, and with larger populations, the bargaining power of buyers basically is lower. Okay, so lots of buyers, which means that potentially that's a good thing for her entry into the online business in Europe. Availability of substitutes. So again, Europe in terms of furniture would have a considerable amount of substitutes, more than likely. But if you look carefully through the case study, she probably needs to think about and leverage her uniqueness being an Australian supplier. That is a key point which would make her business potentially different to those in Europe, therefore reducing the availability of substitutes. So really tricky question again. So the word discuss means that you have to talk about advantages and disadvantages and questions that need to be asked. There, as it says in the waste definition there, identify issues and provide points for and against for both availability of substitutes and bargaining power. And the word advise later on means to recommend or to inform. So if you look at the description there for both of the forces, I would absolutely always start with the definition of what the force is all about before then linking it in with evidence from the case study, in that, potentially with the bargaining power of buyers, first of all, that there is a large population, meaning the bargaining power would be low. But again, even within Europe, there are richer countries and ones that are developing or going through economic hardship. So you would have to be careful and think clearly about where those customers may come from and potentially target your marketing in different areas. For the substitutes, so there would be many substitutes of local European manufacturers, which would be similar and potentially cheaper. So if I was Matilda, then you would have to have a think about innovation, and potentially, because your product is unique and Australian, maybe there's a way that you could leverage that uniqueness to gain more clients. So your advice, again, could be either yes or no. And I'm given a yes answer there. And it's really based around the fact that, look, it's Europe, there's lots of potential buyers, they're moving online to purchase things. And that turnover between accessing the portal and actually the return and actually making purchase, it seems, is quite high. But again, she would need to build the unique aspect of her product. So that was environmental scans. I'm very interested to see the way the examiner maybe includes this in the exam this year.